So that's essentially where unity has come. This is not to say that all has been roses. I want to quote from Valley's book on unity, which provides a slightly different perspective. Many Roman Catholics and mainstream Protestants view unity as out of alignment with traditional Christian beliefs, and the Christian right has been most vocal in labeling unity as heretical and anti-Christian. Unity is viewed as taking non-Christian positions on such issues as the nature of God and man, the role of Jesus, sin and salvation, hell and the nature of the afterlife, and the role of Satan and the devil. Critics of unity indicate that errors in unity teaching are derived from its metaphysical interpretation of sacred scripture, which they view as undermining the biblical message. The bottom line in the words of a leader of the National Council of Churches is that unity does not fit with the mainstream of Christianity. Several Christian commentators consider unity to be the rival of Christian Gnosticism, or even the work of the devil, especially as regards reincarnation. Also, unity spiritual healing practices, as well as those of New Thought in general, have long set it apart from mainstream Christianity, such as Episcopalians and Lutherans, Presbyterians, and so forth. And last but not least, the informal decorum of unity church services has turned off those attuned to more staid liturgy, such as exist in Lutheran and Methodist churches. One quote, "Unity lives on the fringe of Christianity. Some critics say beyond the fringe, over the edge, off the wall." My answer is that these other representatives of Christian are the ones who are in error in their teaching and activity, not unity. Notwithstanding these criticisms, some scholars have noted affinities between unity and certain aspects of Judaism, as well as other fringe sects such as Unitarianism, especially where mysticism is concerned. But the principal conclusion is that unity has had little or no impact on religious scholarship, as evidenced by the fact that as of 2002 at least, many American religious scholars make no mention of it in their work. People like Houston Smith and Jacob Needleman. Among other New Thought teachers, however, unity has fared somewhat better at having attracted the attention of notables such as Emmett Fox, Norman Vincent Peale, and Episcopal Bishop John Shelby Spong. Now we come to divine science, founded by two women, Mrs. Melinda E. Kramer of San Francisco and Miss Nona L. Brooks in Pueblo, Colorado, both of whom experienced completely independently of one another what they call divine healing in the mid-1880s. Both subsequently began healing ministries in their respective cities, and when they discovered each other some years later and found how similar their ideas and experiences were, they quickly decided to join forces. The term divine science came from Mrs. Kramer, but Nona Brooks was the more prominent leader. Brooks was born in Louisville, Kentucky, just a few days before the beginning of the Civil War, and when her mother's health required a change of climate, the family moved to Colorado. Her father's business suffered a downturn, and he died, leaving the family almost penniless, and several of the family were in very poor health, including Nona. Despite a doctor's treatments, the disease grew steadily worse, until Mrs. Kate Bingham, a friend of Nona's older sister, was healed of a persistent illness by Emma Curtis Hopkins. So the Brooks sisters went to her class. At first they were unimpressed, but during the third session, Nona had a profound experience of God's omnipresence, and she was immediately healed. So under the encouragement of her older sister and Mrs. Bingham, Nona subsequently began healing some other people, while she was studying to become a teacher, and then while she was teaching in the Pueblo and Denver public schools. Meanwhile, another of her sisters, Fanny James, had begun teaching healing classes and entered into correspondence with Mrs. Kramer, which led to the latter's coming to Denver to give classes and lectures. And that led to the merger of movements that created divine science. For a while, Nona Brooks continued teaching in the public schools because she needed the income, but by the 1920s, she was giving full-time to Christian healing. She was one of the leaders of the New Thought and was invited to speak at important New Thought gatherings throughout the world. She died in 1945, only 8 days before her 84th birthday. Divine science defines itself as an organized teaching pertaining to God and the manifestation of God in creation. Nona Brooks stated, "The whole of divine science is the practice of the presence of God. Truth comes through the Bible, affirmative prayer, contemplation, and meditation, and the practice of the presence of God here and now." Religious science, of course, is the work of Ernest Holmes, who was born January 21st, 1887, in a rural section of Maine. He was the youngest of 9 children in a relatively poor family and consequently only had a meager schooling, but the family gave considerable emphasis to the reading of the Bible and to Henry Drummond's book on the natural law of the spiritual world. Although he only briefly enrolled in college, somewhat belatedly, he was an avid reader and always seeking answers as to why things were the way they were. His brother Fenwick, who was 4 years older, did complete college and seminary training and became a Congregationalist minister. In 1917, Ernest and his brother Fenwick became full-time teachers of their own metaphysical institute, founded a magazine, established a metaphysical sanitarium in Long Beach, and published their first books. Billed as the Holmes brothers, they conducted several successful and profitable speaking and teaching tours in eastern cities, particularly New York and Boston. But Ernest liked Los Angeles, having moved there in 1918, so that's where he stayed to pursue his lecturing career, while Fenwick moved back east in 1925. In 1924, he met Emma Curtis Hopkins and began studying under her, eventually becoming her close friend. In 1926, he published the first edition of Science of Mind, which was to become the standard textbook for all those who seriously sought to follow his teachings. He eventually yielded to the urging of his wealthy and influential friends who wanted him to organize and formed the Institute of Religious Science and Philosophy in 1927, with himself as a permanent trustee. That same year, he also started publishing the monthly Science of Mind periodical, which continues today with wide circulation. He was a detail man, says Neil Valley in his biography open at the top. Holmes often said that he preferred working solo without an organization around him. In a moment of frustration over difficulties at his institute, Holmes told Elaine St. John's that he might have been better off had he never organized a religious science movement. Administration and organization were not his forte. Instead, he was primarily interested in philosophy and teaching. Managerial tasks were of secondary concern. Consequently, he did not maintain full awareness of administrative matters. And since a part of him wanted nothing to do with managing, Holmes delegated much too much, shifting responsibility to others when he should have assumed it himself. On one hand, he wanted to create an organizational structure that would survive and carry on the movement after his death. On the other, he was not about to give up one iota of control over the institutions and movement he had worked so hard to build over 27 years of his life. When Holmes died in 1960, there were 85 churches spread nationwide with hundreds of licensed spiritual mind practitioners. But they were split into 2 organizations, each claiming leadership of the movement. They were on good terms, at least interpersonally, if not always organizationally, and they finally agreed to join in 2011 as the Centers for Spiritual Living, or CSL, which is the name they use today. There were a number of other New Thought groups. I've found 5 of them: the Society of the Healing Christ, the Christian Assembly, the Home of Truth, the Church of the Truth, and Psychiana. What I could find on the internet, only 2 of those are still in operation today. But most of them were very small, existed only in small areas, typically in California or in western cities, Idaho, Colorado, and so forth. There are 2 associations of New Thought groups. There is the International New Thought Alliance, INTA, which is an umbrella organization that actually began all the way back in 1899 convention of the New England Metaphysical Club. This convention led to the founding of the International Metaphysical League, and that league held its International New Thought Convention in Chicago in 1903. Names changed several times. An international conference was held in London in 1914, resulting in the renaming of that alliance into the International New Thought Alliance, INTA. It continues to conduct its annual World Congress. It publishes a New Thought magazine and asserts that it houses the largest New Thought archives that exist. An important point, Neil Valley recounts the on-again, off-again participation of unity in INTA and its forerunners, culminating in its present more or less friendly non-association. It all centers about Charles Fillmore's hope that INTA would adhere to what he called the Jesus Christ standard, which makes Christianity the centerpiece of New Thought and excludes some of the occult teachings of Eastern origin. So they've agreed to disagree on that point. There's also an affiliated New Thought network based in California. There's an organization of New Thought centers across the United States that are not officially parts of any of these other three. Among other things, they operate the Emerson Theological Institute, where I study. There are a number of publications that have existed at various times, about a dozen altogether over the years, of which 4 are still active. The New Thought Bulletin is published by the INTA. The Daily Word and Unity Magazine are published by Unity, as you well know. And the Science of Mind is the New Thought publication, most likely to be available today, with a circulation of around 200,000 issues per month. Since 1962, when Braden wrote Spirits in Rebellion, some additional writers and speakers have risen to prominence in popularizing New Thought concepts, rarely labeled as such. Among them were Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, Eric Butterworth, Dr. Wayne Dyer, Joel Goldsmith, and Neil Donald Walsh. And perhaps we can also include Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, Gene Houston, and even Matthew Fox as having some kinship with New Thought. So the late 19th century world that New Thought was born into was quite different from that of the early 1800s, where Emerson and Thoreau sought to effect their reforms. Likewise, the world we have today is even more different than the one in which unity, divine science, and religious science were founded. Communications technology has all but obsoleted the publication space of the Daily Word and Science of Mind, and threatens to replace the megachurch as the centerpiece of spiritual ministries. Mind cure remains an important calling card, but it has been transformed by the infusion of Eastern religions on the one hand and modern neuroscience on the other. This is not to say that the problems of health, disease, environment, poverty, and world peace have been solved. They are perhaps larger and more urgent than ever. But the old tools, settings, and approaches have been found inadequate. The diversity of doctrines, usually seen as a blessing, has become a liability as too many churches compete for too few churchgoers. And yet the religious scene is still like the business environment, characterized by more and more intense competition with too little cooperation, too superficial, and certainly not leading to amalgamation. The leading issue of the day, then, is the eclipse of the sacred by the secular, the same thing that we had 200 years ago. The right brain eclipsed by the left, which is not all that different from what it was in 1800, but also now intensified by technological complexity and hyper-competition. The challenge for religion is to become part of the solution, not more of the problem. At this point, for meditation, I would like you to sit quietly with your eyes open, but soften the focus. Slowly look around the room, but don't fix on anything. Just sort of take in the big picture. Sense being in the room. Sense the space that you are a part of. Sit with that for a few seconds. And once you've got the hang of that, now look around the room again, but stop at a spot, focus in on it, observe it carefully. Then move to another spot and do it again. And repeat this 4 or 5 times. And get the feel of that. Now go back to the first version again and move around the room, just getting the big picture with your eyes in soft focus. Can you feel the difference? We started with the right brain then we go to the left brain, and then back to the right brain. New thought is emphasizing the right brain, the soft focus, not the detail that science would take you into. That's what it's all about. Thank you.